If you have Hashimoto's, one of the worst mistakes you can make is believing that there's nothing you can do about it. In today's video, I'm going to be explaining why that's the wrong mindset, even though I understand why you have it, and what you can do about Hashimoto's that perhaps no one is telling you. Why do I say it's one of the worst mistakes you can make, believing that there's nothing you can do? Because the last 20 years of my experience, and even the body of research that's been done on Hashimoto, says yes, there are things you can do. But I understand why you may have gotten to the place where you think there isn't anything you can do. And here's why. The typical Hashimoto story that I've heard 1,000 times goes something like this. At some point, you start kind of feeling bad. Maybe you're starting to drag, you get a little fatigue, maybe your hair starts to thin, you're losing hair. You might get a little depression and anxiety that you've never had before. Maybe you start getting joint and muscle pains, and you go see your primary doctor, and they don't check your thyroid. They check blood sugar, they have like 5 minutes to spend with you, and then they kind of send you on your way. Maybe they say, hey, eat right and exercise, or they say maybe you need an antidepressant. Well, you follow their directions, you follow their orders, you're a good patient, and a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 or 4 years goes by, and you repeatedly go back to this person, and they still don't check your thyroid gland, your thyroid function. Or if they do, they just check like your TSH, and if your TSH is fine, then they're fine, then you're fine. And as you can imagine, I think that's probably a mistake because I've got other videos that kind of break this down. But just checking TSH, I understand why they do it, because they're stuck in an insurance model and they're trying to, what's the cheapest stuff we can do and not get sued, right? I understand that. And so the years go by and you don't get any help, but you're still feeling worse. And then maybe you do get diagnosed hypothyroid because finally your TSH gets high enough that they finally check the rest of your thyroid panel. They go, oh, guess what? You're hypothyroid. And so then they prescribe you Synthyroid or Levothyroxine, the generic. And you take that and maybe you even feel a little bit better for a while. But eventually your medication dose has to be changed or your symptoms aren't getting better. And then they check your thyroid panel and they say, hey, your TSH is normal, your T4 is normal, your thyroid's fine. Whatever you're feeling can't be a thyroid problem. You probably need to go see a gastroenterologist or a psychiatrist or an orthopedist. And that kind of, lets you know that there's a bigger problem. The way we treat medicine and health in this country is that they all learn the body in chapters, so they don't really see the connections. And so you finally get referred, and then eventually maybe 6, 7, 10 years is the average. About 10 years after you're first having your symptoms, you finally get your thyroid antibodies checked. And they're high, and they say, oh, you have Hashimoto's. But they don't do anything different. The endocrinologist honestly doesn't really care if your thyroid antibodies are high or not. They really only have one set of tools, right? It's replacing the hormones. That you probably need. But the whole other side of that is stuff that they don't do, which is, there are things you can do to make Hashimoto's better. I've been doing it for 20 years. The research is out there to show it. The problem is that the vast majority of endocrinologists and primary care doctors aren't doing it. And so they tell you that, well, there's nothing you can do. Diet has nothing to do with it, right? There's nothing you can take. And that's just not true. So I understand why you got to the place where you thought, well, there's nothing I can do. I'm just going to have to live with this. I'm going to have to be overweight. I'm going to have low energy. I'm going to have thinning hair. I'm going to have to feel like crap. But I'm here to tell you that don't do that. That's a terrible mistake. You need to be working with someone who does understand that there's something you can do about Hashimoto's, that there are massive diet changes you can do that can pay off, that there are things you can do to make your autoimmune problem better. Now, so it's not just as simple as taking vitamin D and changing your diet. I mean, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a huge home run. But it can be more complicated. So if the doctor you're working with now, the endocrinologist, says, hey, nothing you can do about that, I am not telling you to find a different endocrinologist. I'm telling you to find a different doctor. Someone like myself, someone who's trained, someone who has a lot of experience, who can go through and dissect your immune system, look for the triggers that are kind of promoting the autoimmune problem. And I've got other videos that explain, like, kind of how Hashimoto's gives you a double whammy. I don't really have time today to go over that. I just want you to know that I understand how you got here, right? You've had years of people not believing you. You've had years of people telling you that your thyroid was normal. You've had people telling you there's nothing you can do. And so you trust them and you think, well, they're right, there's nothing I can do. But I've got hundreds and thousands of patients over the last 20 years that are directly disproving what those people are telling you. And there's a whole body of research, real honest to goodness research that's been published to show, yeah, you can do things. The problem is you got to be working with a doctor who knows all those things. But I got to tell you, you're probably not going to find someone who knows all this stuff in a insurance model. Why? Because when you're living in the insurance model, they really only have about 5, maybe 6 or 7 minutes to talk to you, if they even look at you, and give you something to try. And remember, they only have a very limited toolbox, right? The limited toolbox is replacement hormones like levothyroxine or Synthyroid or cytomel or T3, but that's it. There isn't anything else beyond that. Very rarely you'll find an endocrinologist who is going to test all the stuff that needs to be tested, that's going to be, analyzing your immune system and looking at your immunophenotype. So it's a challenge, I get it, but don't give up, because there are things you can do to feel better. There are things you can do to change your Hashimoto's. There are things you can do to recover. I'll see you next time.